it is a lot easier to do everything that I do when you've already replaced your income. If you're financially independent, you really don't care. I am on like this crusade of figure out how close you are to financial independence.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Dave Homyak. Dave is a serial entrepreneur that finds value in plain sight through real estate, rockstarva.com, development, and adding value. Says you also like to build confidence by completing challenging physical activities. So I'm excited that I'm excited to talk to you today, but that line specifically stood out to me. So I'm excited to dive in there. But first, thanks for coming on the show today, Dave. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Would you start by just telling us your background, tell us your story, kind of how you got to where you are today?
Sure. I am a recovering engineer, so you got to be very logical. You can't take risks. There's a lot of anxiety when it comes to what if the roof leaks and I don't know how to fix it? What if the plumbing leaks, whatever. So I was a very conservative person. I have a mechanical engineering degree, automotive engineering specialty, and I did a thing called engine calibration for a living. And that just means make the car's engines run smoothly. So the big companies I worked for were Chrysler, Detroit Diesel, and General Motors. And I did that for 20 some years. And I'd always been interested in real estate, but I had never pulled the trigger. I wrote a couple offers, never closed on anything. And I'm 52. So if anybody in the audience is a little older and a little nervous, it's fine to get started at 52. There's no problem with that. If you're younger than that, you're beating my age for starting out. And bottom line is I decided I wanted to leave my W-2, and I was trying to do some math because I had some money saved up and invested in 401k, stuff like that. So it's like, I want to leave. What percentage of my income would I need to replace if I wanted to walk away and be comfortable? And it's like 40%. I'm like, oh, I'd be nervous. And I'm like 60%. I'm like, oh, I'd be nervous. And then I'm like, well, if I replaced 100%, I'd be out of excuses, right? So my goal was to replace 100% in 2 years or less. I ended up jumping on Bigger Pockets, great resource for finding out different things. And the real estate category at the time, this is in 2017 when I'm doing some research, the category that stood out at the time as a clear winner was short-term rentals. So way less crowded space. And then the market that stood out, there were a couple, and I did some research and ended up deciding to invest in the Smokies, which was a great place to invest.
Good choice.
Yeah. And just for people that are playing around with different asset classes, in my mind, there's how much money can you make, but there's also, I would prefer, if I can be lazy and I can do some research on how to be more lazy, I would much rather be lazy. And you could call it efficient or lazy. I don't know. But bottom line is, one of the reasons I really like the Smokies is the cabins come fully furnished. So you'd have a purchase agreement for a cabin, and then you'd have a separate bill of sale that you get the entire contents of the cabin for $1, if you close on the cabin. So I would close on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I would have the cabin rented out that weekend. So I bought my first investment property May of 18. It went well. Bought my second one in August of 18, my third one in November of 18, and then took a buyout from General Motors February of 19. So 11 months after I made the decision, 9 months after I bought my first property, I was able to quit. That is significantly harder to do now with interest rates higher, but it was very possible to do even a couple of years ago. So from 18, 19, and 20, you could have absolutely done it, like no problem. And ended up doing that. And then some people found that entertaining. So I ended up getting on some podcasts. And what I found is that I had not accurately, uh, not accurately realized what my ability to analyze properties is, and that it's better than a lot of people's. So a lot
Sure.
of people started to ask me for help. I was happy to help them. So I became a real estate agent and built a team in Tennessee solely to help people buy short-term rentals. So we were picking out the best stuff. That went really well for a couple of years. Interest rates went up, and as soon as they went up, I'm also somebody that would never tell somebody, like, you know, this is an okay deal. Like, I'm not about an okay deal. We were talking about tickets beforehand, right?
Right.
I want a killer deal. I want
Yeah.
very little effort. I want very high return. I don't want you to have a lot of effort. Can you make money in the
Right.
Smokies now? Yes. Are there certain niches that you can still kill it in the Smokies? Yes, but you have to work way harder to get it just so. So I'm like, I understand the Smokies are almost like S&P 500 stocks right now. Like, that thing's going to keep going. It isn't like you're going to go to Austin and get banned, or here's your permit, but when it expires, we're not going to renew. So all the long-term risk is gone for markets like the Smokies or like Panhandle of Florida. Secondary vacation markets. And then what ended up happening is I had a client that needed to 1031. They had already burned through the first part of the 45-day period. So they had like 30 some days left. And I'm like, okay, so if you came to me and you were in a 1031 exchange crunch, you kind of got to cut to the front of the line of whatever cabins are best. And I'm like, okay, I will find you something. I did 4 hours of deal analysis, and I presented it to this person, and they said, I'm not interested in that cabin. And I was really upset. I was not happy at all. I had just done 4 hours of work, and I had a business coach at the time. And I talked to him. I'm like, I'm never doing this analysis again. This irritated me. And he's like, okay, slow down. And one of the things about me that I think is good is I normally have a business coach. I have one now. It's a different one than I had at the time. And I've had three. And they give you advice and you pay them a lot of money, but the
Yeah.
advice they give you is worth more than what you're paying them. So it's like, it's a good thing.
Right. Right.
So my business coach at the time said, okay, so you did 4 hours of analysis. If he would have bought that, what would your part of the commission have been? And I said, $16,000. He's like, okay, you would have made 4,000 an hour. What happened with that property? I said, I presented it to another friend of mine. 45 minutes later, he bought it. So he said, okay, so you were 5 hours all in instead of four. You were still in the thousands of dollars an hour. And I said, oh, yeah, you're right. And then he said, and by the way, is part of this analysis like rocket science? Is there calculus involved? And I'm like, no. He goes, oh, why don't you hire somebody to do the math for you? So I ended up setting up a Google sheet, and I ended up saying, if you punch in these numbers, basically the Google sheet will do the math, come up with this ratio that's the starting point. And then I put in a thing called conditional formatting, which is if it's a really good deal, if it's a lower ratio, it turns green. If it's a medium, it turns white, and then 90% of the stuff turns red. So it's really easy. So bottom line is, to this day, we still identify we put in every property in the Smokies and see what turns green. So at that point, that's when I ended up going to hire a virtual assistant. I ended up getting an absolute amazing one, found her. A friend of mine said, I have two absolute amazing ones with 10 years experience. Can somebody use one? My business model's changing. I don't want, I would like to see her land okay. So I hired her. She started to do some of the math. She ended up, she was so amazing. I was having monthly lunches with some friends of mine that are in an organization called GoBundance, which I highly recommend for anybody looking to go next level. It's just amazing. It's changed my life. And we'll talk about that on the doing fun things that challenge you part.
Yeah.
That's where that came from. That is no place else but there. And all these guys are like, I'm like, she's the most amazing virtual assistant ever. And virtual assistant, for people that don't know, is just somebody that works remotely. So we happen to source typically from the Philippines. We've sourced from a couple other countries, but typically from the Philippines. What you're looking at is a college educated person with 5 years experience, super dedicated, that basically I can pay a little bit less than minimum wage. You pay me minimum wage, and you have an incredible worker that's really loyal and really smart and brings their experience to help guide you in what you think you need. They can say, this is actually a little bit better than what you have. So bottom line is that I was going to lunch with these guys, and I'm like, she's amazing. I'm like, do you think she can get me one? I go, I don't know. I asked her, Jess, do you think you could find people like you? She goes, I think, yeah, absolutely. So the first three virtual assistants that my company that I didn't have placed was with three guys at lunch in Michigan that were part of GoBundance. And at the end of the conversation was the same, which was, what do I owe you? And I said, "Nah, nothing, don't worry about it." And then another guy, uh, Brent, goes, you do realize you have a virtual assistant placement company and you're providing a valuable service and you need to start charging. And I'm like, I do. Oh, I had no idea. So similar to the second, similar to when I started to sell properties in the Smokies, I didn't realize that what I had was something that other people have a hard time doing. And and finding a virtual assistant, you can find one yourself. It isn't rocket science. The problem is, can you find the best one? And that's where, on average, we have 140 applicants for every job description we publish, and we're weeding out to the best of the best. So that's a little bit of kind of what I did, how I replaced my engineering income 3 times in 5 years. And then the other thing, and another kind of shout out for GoBundance, is I joined GoBundance. I'm like, okay, I'll own a couple cabins. And, I didn't think the VA company would come about, but it did. That I was just like minding my own business because I'm like a guy, right? I'm just like, I do what I do. And I was hanging out with these guys, and they're all successful, right? When you're hanging out with guys that are successful, it's just like, oh, I'm just supposed to be successful. I didn't know. you know, it becomes significantly easier. It's assumed that you will, and then you you develop that mindset. You're just like, okay, I will, and then I do. And there was a guy that I had some clients that were getting new cabins built in the Smokies, and they were gorgeous. And I talked to a guy, happens to be Michael Blanc, who has a apartment syndication company, an educational company, Dealmaker Live. And I showed him the cabin, and he's like, maybe I'll get one. And this is a 3-day weekend. And on the third day, I asked him, are you going to get the cabin or not? I'm going to make him say no, right? I'm either going to close him or not. And he goes, I'd just be too distracted from my core business. He said, but tell you what, I'm pretty good at raising money. How about I raise like 20 or 25 million and you just build a whole neighborhood full of those? What do you think? And I said, I think I wasn't expecting anybody to say that to me this weekend, right? Like, I'm just like a guy that owns a couple of cabins that, like, I have my traction, whatever. So bottom line is, I fly down to the Smokies. A couple of days later, I talk to these guys, and they look, they're like, who is this guy that comes in and says, oh, I say, I want to check on the lots and the 3 cabins that were getting built. And by the way, I have a friend that's going to raise 20 or 25 million that wants to build a neighborhood. And they're looking at me like, we're not used to people walking in saying this. I'm like, I'm not used to this either. So it's all, we're both mildly amused that I'm coming in and saying this stuff. And bottom line is, the deal with Michael didn't work out. I worked with his team a little bit, and we just decided it wasn't the best for all of us. But what ended up happening is I ended up making a deal and getting brought into a group of locals that basically they had all the know-how. They had they knew how to build. They knew all the people to contact. They had all the relationships with the people that had, the city water, the source, the septic, all the civil engineers down there and stuff like that. But what they didn't have is access to the capital that I had. So I was trying to figure out, like, are they you know, why do they want me in their group? And that's why. But I couldn't figure that out. So I was very leery. Like, are they trying to, get me to pay money, and they're gonna, there's some scam
Yeah.
going on. And that's where I think it's really interesting. So what I do isn't that challenging. And I think what my partners do is way more work. And they think what I do is really challenging. What they do isn't nearly as bad. And that is what I would encourage everybody listening to this podcast to think about. What are you good at? What don't you mind doing? And then you find people that you need that other stuff. So I partner with a lot of people, like 4 or 5 people, 6 people instantly come to mind of, hey, you have this, I have this. Together, there's more value if we combine. So I make a lot of partnerships based on that. And my life is richer for it. I get access to a bunch of really cool people, and we hang out and do deals, or try to do deals. And we know things are going to happen in the future if we haven't done them yet.
Yeah. It, it's an amazing, I mean, there's so much there to to unpack in, like, but like that, the way that you sort of just walk through that whole thing almost makes it sound easy. And I know you said you like to be lazy or efficient, but it's like, I think I think it can't be like you. I'm sure you're working and doing what you need to do, but I also think there's something to that, and maybe this comes from being in GoBundance. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of good things about it, but just like there's something to that, kind of belief that you're going to do it, that you're just going to, like, these things are going to work out, you're going to keep going, you're going to, kind of partner with the right people, and deal with Michael Blog didn't happen, that's fine, like it led to other things. Like, I think the willingness to just try things, and even like hear other people's you have a VA placement company, and then, okay, I'll make it a VA placement company, and it's
Right.
just kind of, that people like to think about the what ifs, about what could go wrong, like, with, and then because of that, don't do these things. And you started the whole story with, I'm an engineer, very conservative, you know that background, but it doesn't fit with what, kind of what these steps you've taken over the last 5 years. My question around that is, like, how did you decide, how did you make that shift in your mindset, as to, like, just being what many people would consider probably less conservative than what you describe as an engineer?
It is a lot easier to do everything that I do when you've already replaced your income. If you're financially independent, you really don't care. Like, there is, and I am on, like, this crusade of figure out how close you are to financial independence. And there's some people I've talked to recently that they're like, I have a decent amount of money saved up, but I think I have to work. And I go, I don't care if you quit. I want you to have the confidence to know that you can quit, because then nothing at work can really bug you. I went from um, wanting to keep my job to, I really don't care if you want to fire me, I'll walk today. I won't, we don't even need to do 2 weeks. And that is a wonderful feeling of, I'm not concerned about the money driving what I'm trying to do. I just want to do fun stuff with cool people, and I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. And there's not going to be pressure to, I need money. I need to eat. I need a roof over my head, or even just, I don't want what I've saved in my 401k to disappear rapidly or whatever. So that's the first step, is just figuring out how close you are. And maybe I mean, when I did it, I had a kid, that was a freshman in college. I had a kid that was 1 year younger, and then I had one that just will graduate high school in a month. So I had 3 kids gonna go to college, and I'm like, "Time to go." It's like, I'm good. And that was an added degree of that's a lot of tuition money, and
Yeah.
I'm like, and I don't know if you've ever had to fill out FAFSA, which is a financial aid form, but basically they're like, how much assets do you have? And you're like, I got a couple cabins in the Smokies and they went up in value. And they're like, yeah, well, you're not getting any money. So it's like,
Right.
I'm paying out it,
Yeah.
I'm paying out of
Yeah.
pocket. I am not like on any, I'm going to get a decent loan plan. And it's again, it's okay. Like, would I
Yeah.
prefer to not pay that? Um, I don't know. Bottom line is I think I will pay it and I will earn it back later. It's not catastrophic. It isn't going to screw up my retirement or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it is a great point, and I think it's something that has been, I don't know, maybe hammered home with the current market changes in a lot of asset classes. And you touched on it with short term rentals, and I think your your point of, if you're going to get into short term rentals, being in a place like the Smokies where that's part of the that's part of the local economy. Like short, the vacation industry is part of the local economy. It's not they're not going to change regulations and like block you from doing it like they are doing in a lot of places. And so if you're going to get into short-term rentals, choosing those markets where that it's that type of environment, but that also means everybody who wants to get in short-term rentals is going to those same environments. So it's you're you came into short-term rentals. You made a smart decision, came into short-term rentals at a time when it was good to get in and sort of create that revenue. And so there's going to be naysayers that are like, well, I can't do that now, like, so I can't do what you can do. But I think like what you demonstrated is you didn't stop there. You've just kind of followed the opportunities that arose and shifted, pivoted, whatever. And maybe that financial independence is what allows you to do that. And I think what a lot of people have, kind of realized in the real estate industry now is cash flow, not maybe another name for financial independence, but cash flow is so important to creating that level of safety and comfort that you otherwise don't have if you're kind of living paycheck to paycheck, if you will, whether that's a W-2 job or as a business owner and entrepreneur. So is your focus now on development, the VA business, or maybe, I mean, multiple things? What's kind of next up for you as far as you know what way are you headed in terms of your business strategies?
My goal is to grow my virtual assistant company, somewhat to grow it, but mainly because I think there's such crazy value that you can pay minimum wage and get such a highly skilled employee that gets all this stuff off your plate. And when you get it off your plate, what happens is you have more time to think creatively or meet people for lunch or do other deals or hang out with your kids or whatever. So it, it's it, this is like me telling people to invest in the Smokies in 2018 and 2019. This is happening right now. You can get a VA. Your life gets super simplified. You either have more time to do the stuff you're best at that makes you more money, or more time to hang out with family, exercise, whatever that is. Now, the other thing there's two other things I'm really passionate about that I think are easy. And I still think you can make money in the Smokies in short-term rentals. Just you have to work harder than I'm willing to work, but
Yeah.
I know what the secret sauces are, right? I have an interior design person that she has a proven track record of taking cabins that are not very good looking, very, you know, very pine siding on the inside and looks like it's from the 70s, hasn't been updated. And she updates it with this really modern flair. And then her pricing is really good too. So she does an incredible job. If somebody wanted to get into short-term rentals in the Smokies, I know exactly how I would send them to make money. But the other two things that we found with the development is when you have raw land, you can't really do anything with it. Once you get it entitled, it's worth obviously more. And that jump is sometimes significant. So it's like, how do we get this? Basically, I am going to be having one of the things that have spun out of my virtual assistant placement company is a cold calling team. So we are cold calling. We have bought properties in the past, Michigan, Tennessee, and we're working on, and those were residential. We're working on commercial, some industrial stuff right now as well, trying to land some stuff. And we'll end up spinning into land as well, because I think that getting land entitled is a very easy with you if you have the team, right? Easy way to significantly increase your net worth if you can land these deals. And then the other thing that's really, if it isn't on your radar and you're a real estate person, it really needs to be, is just the whole ADU thing going on. So, Washington, D.C., San Diego, L.A., St. Pete, in Tampa, St. Pete area. Basically, there are certain sections of the city where they're like, yeah, we need more housing. You can buy a house for $1 million, knock it down, build $1 million worth of a triplex, and it's now worth $3 million. So that's some good math, and you get somebody else to do it. It's like, this is pretty cool. And guess what? If you buy the thing, so like if you're going to move any place and there's ADUs around, or the ability to make ADUs, buy the house that you can make the ADUs, and just apply for the permit. It doesn't even matter if you build the ADU. So I would go to someplace, buy the property, apply for the permit. Land value is going to go up 60% as soon as the permit's approved, because it'll be, hey, I need to put a shovel in the dirt. I would prefer not to wait a year. Can I do it? You just added a ton of value. So that to me is if anybody's thinking about moving, that is one thing. When I move, I will absolutely be doing that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I mean, I live in LA, and it's like, that is so huge right now. Just people building ADUs everywhere, and fills the need for housing. People are making the values of their properties go up. I mean, it's people talk about, California and LA as like not a good place to invest, and it's like every place has its strategy that can work, and you just have to figure out what that strategy is. And I think right now here, that's a big thing, that the ADUs are quite popular. And maybe in 5 years it'll be a different strategy, but I think that's just part of being, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, is kind of rolling with what it is. And your story is a great example of that, in that just you found a thing that was going to work for you in 2018. Then you leveraged that knowledge to be able to charge other people to take advantage of it, and just kind of kept. And that's where I mean, this is actually, you mentioned the Bigger Pockets podcast before, but that's one of the things that I thought, that when Brandon Turner was still on there, like, he would talk a lot about adding verticals within your, adding real estate adjacent type of things. So, businesses, services, whatever it is, instead of saying, I'm going to do, real estate, but also I'm going to, open a restaurant and all that. It's like kind of staying in the same area. Each step that you took was built off of what you previously had done. And so it's not like starting over from scratch. You're like, I'm a real estate agent helping people do what I just did successfully. And so it's like, you can show them, I did it, here's what I did. And that's going to, build confidence. And then you did the same thing with the VA. So I think it's a really great kind of path for people to understand, and like go back and play back your story, because it really is, it's pretty cool to hear, just like the success that rolled onto other success. But also, if you really look behind look behind the curtain there a little bit at the strategy. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
Um, Dave, I'll switch gears here. I want to ask you the questions I ask every guest. The first one, of course, is related to the name of the show being Know Your Why. So what is your why? You've kind of talked about all these came from being a conservative engineer to doing a lot of really cool things. What's your why now? What's driving you?
Great question. And again, this goes back to who you're hanging out with, right? So my why is to be of service. And some of that is just to support charities financially. And, again, I'm hanging out with these guys, happen to be in GoBundance. And my ex and I used to tithe. And then I said, well, let's go to a higher percentage. So just tithe, for people that don't know, is just 10% of your income. Let's give that to charity. And then we went to a higher percentage. And then I ran into a guy that was telling a story about how he had built some cabins on some rolling hilled land in Texas for single moms to be able to go and take their kids out to. And then somebody challenged him and said, well, nobody does anything for single dads. So he said, okay, I'll build something for single dads. So then he built cabins for single dads. And I asked this guy, what are your charitable goals? Then he said, well, my charitable goal is to donate $250 million in the next 10 years. And I'm like, how? Like, I was speechless, right? I'm sitting with a guy that's going to donate $250 million. It had never occurred to me that maybe I'm capable of that. So right now I have a very substantial charitable goal that I'm trying to hit. And that's the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, to help others less fortunate that haven't had the opportunities that I've had. A friend of mine and myself, we ended up funding a child sex trafficking sting mission last summer, and that was through aerial recovery. And basically, it happened in Central America, and the end result was 3 child sex traffickers got arrested, and more importantly, 13 kids got returned to their homes. And I'm like, how can I not help people like that, right? So yeah, so that's my why.
It's amazing. That's amazing. And one of my, I mean, it's so powerful to hear that, recognize how much it means to you. So thank you for sharing that here. And I think that one of my favorite things about this podcast, about going to the big real estate conferences and stuff like that, is sometimes having wealth and money gets this like really negative connotation. It's like people are mad at people that make money, and but what is so amazing is like, this is what happens. This is what really happens. Like, this is when people recognize the power that money, the gentleman that you mentioned that wants to give 250 million away, you saved these children. Like that stuff is like, I remember that the very first best ever conference I went to, like Joe Fairless did his talk. It wasn't about real estate investing. He didn't talk about real estate investing at all. He literally talked about like his charitable impact driven missions at that point. There were other people that did the same. Like, they didn't talk about real estate. They talked about what being successful in real estate allowed them to do for other people. And it's just like, it's such a cool is a stupid word for it. It doesn't do it justice, but it's just very, very empowering and like motivational to see like if you're people who are thinking that wealth is a negative thing, like you're not looking at it the right way. You're not thinking about it the way that you are, that like that this is how you actually get to make a difference in the world. Like it takes money to make big things like that happen, and that's where the power in being successful is. And if you get yourself to that point of going back to your point on financial independence, you're financially independent. You can do all of those things. You're not worried about, how am I going to pay my rent that month. Like you're actually creating impact in the world, and so it's really
And
pretty
I think
amazing.
you said that really well. There's a stereotype about money and people that have money. And I think, and then the other thing, and one of the reasons I told that story is there's, that guy would never, that guy would never tell that story, I don't think publicly. Like a lot of people in that room share everything, share the finances, share, relationship stuff, all that
Yeah,
stuff. And I just want to, I kind of want to get it out there to expand people's minds of there's a stereotype that people that have a bunch of real estate are just trying to build their own net worth. And that is absolutely not the case. And if you're motivated by, changing the world, there's a really, real estate is one of the easiest ways to either build a net worth or have a net
yeah,
worth that you can give away.
yeah, yep, absolutely agree. Um, well, Anna, I'm gonna change the next question I usually ask. I'm gonna change it a little bit because I do want to hear about these physical challenges that are physical activity challenges that have you've been or taking on. What give us a little more background on that?
Yeah. So again, I will do things that I will trust others. And if others tell me to do something and that it will benefit me, I'll be like, I don't think so, but I'll do it anyway. And I'll call you a liar later. Right. So these guys told me last year, um, you should do a 5K Spartan race. So that's 3 miles, 20 obstacles. And I'm like, fine, I'll do it. And it happened to be 60 days in the future. So I signed up for it. And then I talked to the guy that's really good at it. And I said, no, what should I do? Didn't research it, had no idea. And he goes, you should probably see if you can run 1 mile. And I said, what if I can run 1 mile? And he goes, well, keep practicing until you can run 1 mile. And the first day I went out and I could run 1/3 of a mile.
Yeah,
And I'm like, this is not good. So I kept working on it, and it took me like 3 weeks or a month. No, I'm a month away. I'm only running 1 mile. Again, I'm like, this is not a good glide path. So I finally run 3 miles from the first time, um, the week before the event. So I've run it on like a Tuesday, Wednesday. The event's on a Saturday. A bunch of us drive over to the stadium. It happens to be a Notre Dame stadium, South Bend, Indiana. We're checking it out, looking at the obstacles, and some are like 3-foot wall, a 4-foot wall. I can climb over that, some monkey bars, stuff like that. And then I'm like, where's the hole in the stadium where you go out and run the 3 miles? And they go, oh, dude, you don't run it outside. You run it up and down these stairs. And I'm like, no way. I have literally ran 3 miles for the first time in my life 2 days ago or 4 days ago or whatever it is. And bottom line is I completed the Spartan 5K race. And I am like, I walk funny for 3 or 4 days, but I am like, if I was by myself, I would have just driven away. Like, yep, just forfeited that. There's no way I'm going to complete it. But I'm there with 14 guys that are all part of this group that are like, okay, everybody said they're going to do it. And, 12 of them took off like gazelles, and me and one other guy were a little slower and had more challenges. But bottom line is we both completed it. And looking back on that, I would have bet against me the morning of the race. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure but I'm like, I'm going to give it my best shot. And then basically then what that does though, is it says,
yeah,
what else am I capable of that I had no idea I could do? And that I was even doubting myself at the last second. So a lot of the past 3 years has just been, oh, I'm a developer. Oh, I run Spartan 5Ks. Oh, I hike the Nepali coast on Kauai, Kalalal Trail, which is 11 miles in. And that's all I read. And I'm like, I'll buy a backpack and do that. And I did that. And what I neglected to read was that there's 5,000 feet of elevation gain in those 11 miles, which completely annihilated me. So,
yeah,
that's another thing that I ended up doing at the end of January that I'm like, and I was hiking out and it's gorgeous there, right? but I'm also in great pain because I
Yeah.
don't know how to backpack. And I'm like, I don't know what shirts to wear. I'll throw them both in. I'll throw in 6 days worth of meals because I don't know what I'll have a taste for. I had a taste for like just sleeping and less weight in my backpack is what I had a taste for. And so I'm hiking out, and these guys are like, "Oh, are you enjoying the hike?" I'm like, "No, I'm not, but I'm going to feel really satisfied when I complete this thing." And I signed up with a group of, part of that same group of guys, and we're going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro in September. So it's like just doing stuff like that and being like, yeah, I'm outside my comfort zone. I will complete it, or I will be, there'll be some serious medical reason why I can't, like if, I hurt my knee or something, I don't know, but, my plan is to complete it. I'm going to go. That should be something I do. But when you start doing that, you realize there's all sorts of other things I can do that I had limiting beliefs on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the Spartan races. I think they're a blast. I've been a little bit since I've done one, but like I for a while did
Mhm.
ran marathons, and I never liked it. It was like it was kind of one of those things that was like,
Right.
oh, it feels good that I did to say I did a marathon, and I'm from Boston, and so I had always wanted to do Boston
Mhm.
Marathon. So there's like this whole thing. And then I ran Boston Marathon. I never wanted to
Mhm.
do it again. I was like, all right, I did it. I did what I needed to do. I'm done as a marathon runner. But it was after that that I
Mhm.
came across those obstacle races, and just um, it's just a fun mix. It's like it's a 5K, but like you don't just go run you
Exactly.
don't just go run the miles. Like you're not just running in a straight line. It's like it's broken up by all these obstacles, and it's like they're hard, but it's to me it's like fun, and it takes your mind off of the running part of it. Like you're just running to get to the next obstacle. You're not
Mhm.
running for the sake of running. So I really enjoy those, and um, the Nepali coast is gorgeous. So I've never done the full hike, but
Mhm.
I've been out there,
It
and
is gorgeous.
it is. I'm sure if it's not the most beautiful hike in the world, it's probably up there on that list. It's pretty crazy. Dave, when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Dave Homyak on Facebook. There's a picture of me standing on a rooftop in Ann Arbor during a sunset. Feel free to send me a message through there. Uh, my virtual assistant placement company is the rockstarvas.com. And, trying to break that stereotype of you have to get a VA and pay them very little and work really hard, and then it's still going to be a clunky process. We're stripping all that out and trying to say, no, you can train in half the time and they get it much faster, and, some next level stuff. So we're helping a lot of business owners free up a bunch of their time and make their businesses more efficient. Um, those are the two main ones.
Okay, perfect. And we'll put all that stuff in the show notes too, so people can find you. My final question for you is: what piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to get started in real estate? They hear this, they're inspired by your story. Um, what would you tell them as kind of some first steps to take?
Figure out a way to hang out with people that know what they're doing. It is it is really scary. Some of the even and I mean and you're gonna have to work. You're gonna have to work at figuring out who that is. There are a lot of gurus out there that I'm not impressed with what they're doing, right? And there's some that I very much am. But no, and then everybody's very polite, right? Nobody's gonna say, well, don't do this one and go to this one. And that's where I'm just like, it's so much harder if you
Yeah,
come in and you don't know what you're doing, right? But bottom line is proven track record, right? That's my biggest thing. What have you accomplished? What do you
yeah,
continue to accomplish? Best predictor of future performance is past performance. If somebody, you know, I ended up investing with Joe Fairless, and one of the reasons I did it is because he had 7 deals that he had completed. And if he, I like, 70. I don't want two,
right.
3 deals, or I'm just started, or I've been doing it a year or two. And I think the other thing is if you are going to go with a guru, there are many more people that are good at sales and good at marketing and good at being enthusiastic than they are about actual execution and numbers, and which are really important. So it's like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, for sure.
It's an interesting mix. I ended up going to some local uh, real estate investment group meetups in Ann Arbor. I I I don't know. I got a little frustrated with that. And so, I was doing the bigger pockets thing, and then feel free to DM the people that you think have some game, ask them questions. And then, if you get to a level where you can join a group like GoBundance, man, that's just some next level stuff, is hanging out with all these guys that are just killing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I completely get around the people that are doing, but it is sometimes hard to tell. There are some really good marketing people that maybe you should
That's
learn
a really
marketing
good way to
from,
put it.
but maybe don't want to learn
Exactly.
real estate from. Yeah, they should make a marketing training course more so than a real estate course. But well, Dave, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate everything that you shared. Folks listening, I know you're going to get a lot out of this episode. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests like Dave. And thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?